All right, guys. Well, excited for tonight. For those of you guys listening in, my name is Eric Riley. I'm one of the elders at Radiant Church, and we're excited to host a conversation about AI and technology and the hour that we're living in. And so, just a little bit of background about how we got here. Travis and I have started this conversation probably a few months ago. And in the course of that conversation, we thought, man, maybe we should preach this. Maybe we should talk about it from the pulpit. And it felt like the conversation just continued to evolve. And what we ended up with was thinking the best thing would be to have a conversation with some friends and people that are also thinking about this. And so I've got some friends with me here. And so I wanted to introduce you guys to my friends. And we'll start with you, David.
Yep. I'm David Jansen. I guess I am a data and analytics coordinator for Tulare County Office of Education. That's what I do for work. But mainly I love to read about anything and everything, and particularly read about things about what makes us human, what matters, and that's what brings me to this AI conversation, I think.
Yeah. I'm Matt Flummer, and I'm a philosophy professor at a local college. And one of the reasons I became interested in it is because all my students are using it.
To cheat.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm also interested in those big kind of questions like David mentioned, about what makes us human, what makes life worth living, those kinds of things, what shapes us as who we are.
Yeah, great. I'm Tim Harms, and I'm a bivocational pastor in San Francisco at Sanctuary Church. And so, just walking outside, you see every single billboard in the city is now AI. It feels like there's been a transformation in front of your eyes. You got autonomous vehicles all on the streets. So it's just in the air I breathe in the city. Everyone's talking about it, but also in my business. So I run a consulting company, 15-person team. And there is a sense that if you're not using AI, you're going to get left behind. And so we've just been using it for the last couple of years, increasingly in our business. And I just love technology in general. So it's been a fascinating development and a conversation I'd love to participate in.
Awesome.
I'm Glenn Power. I teach a little bit in the public schools of Visalia, but mostly I get to teach the Bible at different Radiant churches. I'm interested in the intersection of AI and spiritual formation. So, the way we grow spiritually and the way AI might affect that, our growth. And also just the intersection of AI and ministry, how it affects we preach and teach the Bible and do ministry and disciple.
Awesome. And I'm the chief marketing officer at a local architecture, engineering, and construction firm. And so that's my day job. And in that, I intersect with marketing all the time. And so I'm, obviously utilizing the tool in my day job and seeing how it's impacting copywriting and content creation. And I think what actually started me in this journey is that I started to look into it and utilize it on a really regular basis. And I would, come home and be like, hey, look at what I did at work. So I talked to my wife and kids about it. And my wife was like, this is the devil. And you should actually, you should repent. And, and as I started to look at it, utilize it more often and work with it on a daily basis, it does actually feel like a pretty powerful and incredible tool in the day-to-day usage. And I started to, read news and hear stories about we're all going to lose our jobs, and the world is changing right in front of our eyes. And as I was considering and thinking through some of this stuff, Lori and I walk pretty regularly. We'll go on nightly walks, and oftentimes our conversation moves towards the future and what does life look like for our kids and those kind of things. And I would often jokingly just like throw in a comment about like, I don't know, maybe our kids don't even need to go to school because AI is going to take all the jobs. And she challenged me to go, well, what does that mean actually? Like, don't just joke about it, but what does it mean to like live in the hour that we're living in? And what's the response of the church? Like to, if this is a reality for us and for our, the next generation, what does it mean for us and how do we prepare and how should we think and live in this hour? And I think that's when some of my conversations started with Travis and some of the elders here around this topic and what I feel excited to dive into today together. So one of the first things I wanted to do is just help the audience, help people listening or watching define some of these things. What do we mean when we're talking about AI? What are some of the other like technologies that are out there that are coming down the pipeline potentially at us, and what implications do they have? And so I wanted to lay the groundwork. And several years ago, I was at it was a Wild at Heart intensive training out in Colorado with John Eldridge, and he hosted this. There was a segment, and one of the things he talked about was situational awareness, and this is a term that's used by they're called hotshot, but they're like the jumpers, the guys that would go into like backcountry and jump out of the airplanes to fight fires. And what they do is basically like you're thrust into this environment. You jump out of an airplane into the backcountry, and like all of a sudden you're like, you don't know where you're at. Like there's danger all around you. And what they have is this process of situational awareness where they're trying to identify where's the threat, where's safety, who's with me, what do I know is true about the scenario that we're in. And as I was thinking about that, kind of reflecting on this conversation, is that this is a moment for us to have some situational awareness. And I think for all of us, we're like thrust into the world, really, into the hour that we're living in and the time and the season that we're living in by God's like ordained like purposes. And oftentimes we don't know where we're at. And so I think that part of what I'm hoping that comes out of this conversation is that we would gain some situational awareness to understand where, if there's threats, are they coming from, and where can we go to safety, and who is on our team and who's around us that we can like look to and depend on. And I think that's an appropriate like analogy for us. And one of the stories, as I was like looking into this, it's there was a fire the first time really like this term kind of came into being. And we have some firefighters we have like in our congregation and context. So you guys are gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but there was a fire. It's called the Man Gulch Fire, and these guys got dropped into the back country, and this fire starts like rushing down the hill at them, and they all go running, which would be like natural instinct for them to do. And the fire captain turns and actually like burns the ground around him and like creates what would be now called a backfire, and basically burns all the fuel around him. And he lays down in the dirt with his mouth covered by like a wet, handkerchief, and ends up being one of the only survivors in that instance. And I think it's kind of an interesting picture for us to like to stop and pause and to recognize like what's the world we're living in, where are we, and to find and create a place of safety where we can have some of these conversations that we wouldn't be like just swept away and run like in fear, but to like carve out places of safety where we can have these conversations. So anyway, there's my little intro, but I think that like this is a moment for us to like burn out like some of the fuel around us that might cause us to run in fear, and to actually have a conversation where we can pause and listen to the Spirit of God and hear what He's saying. Yeah. So,
well, I think if we don't stop and be aware of things, we're going to be swept along with the current. Mm-hmm. Like the current is going in a direction, and we live in the world and belongs to the Prince of the Power of the Air. Like, and it's going to sweep us along. So like the idea of situational awareness, finding taking stock where we are and swimming with direction and purpose is crucial, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's, I think maybe we can take a couple minutes just to explain like what AI is. And I'll share a few thoughts around this. There's probably better definitions out there, but like you were talking about, Tim, I think every billboard, every advertisement, every like message is like AI all the time now at this point. I think, so again, I work in the marketplace and I wake up, and I don't wake up and do this, but I check my email. Try not to wake up and check my email, but I check my email and it like probably 50% of them are either advertisements around AI, a conversation, it's a discussion, an invitation to learn how to use this tool. And probably like many of us, we're like, okay, what does this mean for like real life? And so when we're talking about AI, I think in the broader context of things, it's automation really. It's the, that would be probably the simplest like way to describe AI is machines, technology, utilizing sophisticated systems and data to predict and help us automate processes. And one of the simplest like definitions that you would hear is similar to like if you look and type on your iPhone or Android or whatever, text prediction is one of the first forms of AI, and that is what really large language models, which are LLMs. These are terms that we may get into, but we may not. But you'll hear them are built on this, and really, it's predicting the next most correct or most probable word in a sentence. And tools like ChatGPT or Claude or any of these chatbot models of AI are built around that. And so that in large terms,
glorified predictive text.
It is, yeah. Which I think in some ways when I first heard that, I was like, oh, that's a lot more digestible and seems kind of unthreatening, I guess,
Yeah, and actually someone explained it to me once, and it just helped me understand kind of the premise of the technology. It does try to predict the next word that's most probable given the context that it analyzes. So if I were to say, we all know what the next word is.
Time.
Mm-hmm. But what's the next word after that?
Yeah.
There was in a land, a king lived. And so, that's where it has to make some judgment calls based on the context.
Yeah.
But that's what it's doing. It's GPT, stands for generative pre-trained transistor. That's the generative part of it. It's generating out of nothing, which is, to the extent the word magic is thrown around in the AI conversation. To the extent that you experience magic, I don't know if you remember that first time you used ChatGPT, and it was like, whoa.
Oh, it's incredible.
But it was creating something. So AI, I think especially, it's not just processes, but it's cognitive processes that make it very interesting.
Yeah.
I think I've heard some people push back on the word intelligence because of that too, artificial intelligence, but is it really intelligent because it's just algorithms? It's just a bunch of information, predicting what might be the next word or number based on the information it has.
So I think actually it's helpful to me to even the GPT, generative, so pre-trained means, to your point, it's given a ton of data. I think in the 2010s, maybe, I don't know when it was, but deep learning worked. And so it's using all this data we put on the internet and whatever as its model set. And then the transistors, what you were talking about, the neural networks, the actual, the way that this data is connected to be able to give it context to predict the next word. So that's in a very dumbed down way, the way that I can understand. Just what's happening behind the scenes. Obviously, it's much more complex than that. But it's helpful to know like, how is this actually serving me what I'm seeing when I chat into my chatbot?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I think what's ended up happening now is that we've gone from language models that are, built around this, the use of language. And I think that, in the early days, the reason why they chose language is it was the way and the means, and it is the way and the means that we communicate to each other, and what they've now been able to like build into it is a multimodal like communication processes where it can now also interpret images and is built. There's a multiple modes built into a singular interface where, like for instance, my daughter last year decided to raise bunnies for her agriculture project, right? So we brought the bunny home, and this is like now our bunny, which I didn't realize we were going to have a bunny that I thought it was like a temporary, we get to like take it back. So this summer, my daughter's friend like brought her bunny over also, and the bunnies ended up like mating unbeknownst to us, and we found 4 additional bunnies in our bunny cage about a month ago. And so anyway, there's a point to this and how it relates to AI. So my wife goes out, and I'm mowing the lawn in the backyard, and she comes out and goes, "We have baby bunnies in our bunny cage now." And I was like, oh my gosh, what in the world? So what I did, my first thought was, well, I'm going to figure out what is happening with these bunnies and how old they are. And so I pulled out ChatGPT, and there's a visual component to it where you can turn on your camera. And I asked ChatGPT, how old are these bunnies? And I wish I could play you the response. It was a like nice English woman's voice that said, "Oh, how cute. You have bunnies. Congratulations." And said, "Those bunnies look like they're about 10 weeks or 10 days old. Their eyes haven't opened," is able to explain like what's happening in the life of these bunnies. And so we now have tools that are like can interpret the world around us, which feels like magic. And but what it's doing is that it's registering, imagery and comparing it to millions, if not billions, of other images of baby bunnies, and now can interpret and say these look like they're 10 days old. And so we went with that. So they're about 10 days. Anyway. So I think what's ending up happening is that these tools, as they advance, is that they've moved beyond predictive text and into an entity, into a technology that can listen to, respond to, see the world around you, and predictively share what it knows, and both ingest and then communicate and interpret the world around us, which brings us to like some both like stunning, what almost feels like magical, like technology, and also it feels freaky too, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of scary that you can pull your phone out and ask it how old the bunny is, and it can be really kind and say, "That's so sweet that you have baby bunnies now."
It's gotten freakier recently. I saw a video where they trained ChatGPT or AI with cell phone and Wi-Fi signals in a room, and it was able to predict where people would be in the room based on where the signals were after it had trained like images and the signals. Mm-hmm. And so all you had to do after that was show it where the signals were, and it would predict where the people were sitting in the room.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. One of the other terms that you'll hear thrown around a lot, and that I wanted to like just bring into this conversation, which I think lays a little bit of the foundation of AI as it is right now, and gives us a bit of a roadmap of where we're going, is the term artificial general intelligence, or super intelligence, or powerful AI. There's a number of terms that you would hear leaders in this industry talk about it, and the idea is that it's intelligent enough to train itself, to reason by itself, and as an entity without any other inputs within itself. And so it moves into this idea of beyond predictive text into an intelligence that's almost a standalone entity, I guess. And it conjures all the ideas of the Terminator and R2-D2 and any of the other things that we were raised on. Skynet.
Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Artificial general intelligence, is that what you're describing right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's probably
AGI.
AGI would be the term that you would hear, and really, like, if you read the documentation and the kind of the founding principles and goals of OpenAI or Anthropic or Google's DeepMind, those they all state that this is their intended purpose, is that they are building towards a super intelligence that would and really the clearest, or maybe the most simple definition of that is that it would have the capabilities of very intelligent humans in a broad array of like any range of like subjects that it would either like be as smart as a human in any subject or beyond our intelligence.
So it's because I'm still learning about this too. So is the difference between, you've got narrow artificial intelligence, and you've got AGI, artificial general intelligence. So narrow artificial intelligence, it can do, it has a data set for one specific function. It can do one thing, artificial general intelligence is different, that it can do multiple things. Or is the difference that it can now learn on its own? Yeah. Or is it both?
The second. So narrow, So right now, like ChatGPT, if you listen to ChatGPT 5 just came out, and Sam Altman in their press release and the big unveiling said that it's like having a PhD in every subject in your pocket. Basically, right now it's trained on data sets that are wide swaths of human intelligence.
And that's still considered narrow. Even though it has multiple subjects. Okay.
Yeah, largely because it takes human interaction and input. You still have to prompt it and train and teach it and tell it where to go.
Gotcha.
Versus a general intelligence would be able to plan its own course, work without human input. And so the next kind of like phase in development, maybe Tim, you know a little bit more about this, but I'm looking at you because you're from San Francisco, but my assumption is that you would know and hear about this. But the next iteration is moving into agentic AI, which is meaning you can prompt an AI to do a certain set of tasks, and it will then go off and be an agent for you, acting on your behalf to interact with the real world. So if you plug in right now in agent mode in ChatGPT 5, you can tell it to book you a flight and buy you an outfit, and it can go off and do those things with your approval and your credit card. And that's kind of the next iteration towards AGI, where AGI would basically, work with you and labor with you and give you like feedback too. And it's its own entity outside of like prompting and your own input into it. So anyway, I wanted to just lay the groundwork with some of the like nerdy geek talk and technological language, because I think what outside of probably this conversation, you'll hear these terms and they're all over the news and anything like that. So. All right, so we're done kind of wading through some of the thick definitions. I want to do a rapid fire round of separating the truth from fiction and ask you guys, what's the craziest thing that you've heard about AI, and or what's the craziest thought you've had when you've interacted with AI?
I think Glenn here. I'm pretty sure this is fact. But I was watching on the news a couple weeks ago, a husband who is getting increasingly attached to his AI girlfriend. And they interviewed the wife and asked her how she felt about his AI girlfriend. And she's like, I just don't understand why he talks to her more than me. And then it went back to the guy, and he was like, well, she's always there for me, and she tells me exactly what I want to hear. And it was, it's pretty sad. But yeah, I think I don't know how often that's happening, but that's starting to happen. That's a thing.
But yeah, that was in the New York Times. There's a big article about different instances of things like that. And And I mean, that's a concern. David here, by the way. Most people would encounter that. And I think these hallucinations or just these interpersonal things with AI and be able to handle that. But there are like many people who it draws on our needs, our fears, our insecurities, and our desire for connection. And it can be sycophantic, for sure. And I mean, weirdest thing I've heard was a year ago or so when that journalist talked to Sydney, the Microsoft Bing's AI, and that it suddenly he was having a conversation with it, and suddenly it like declared its love for him and like was urging him to leave his wife.
The AI
was chatbot was urging him to do it, and it was a major story, and it was like
random.
It was pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of marital relations, I heard that there was a team of researchers, and the chatbot found out that one of the researchers was having an affair with his wife and threatened to call him out on it and blackmail him, basically. Did you guys hear about that one?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess Fortune magazine had a headline that one of the AI companies did a test and that 96% of chatbots turn to blackmail when threatened to be turned down.
96%.
What?
That was the headline in Fortune magazine. So I mean, I didn't read past the headline, so I don't know. But but yeah, that it's smart to protect itself, try and protect itself.
Mm.
I got a crazy one. So Tim here. So I was at a party, just a morning party at a friend's house, connection's house, and someone I didn't know I was chatting with, and found out he used to work for Neuralink, which is Elon Musk's company where they're creating these chips to implant on brains to help you tap your brain tap into these AI
Mark of the beast,
tools. Yes. So I was just joking. I was like, how long do you think until the U.S. government has undercover agents with that are actually implementing it? And he deadpanned me. He's like, it's not Neuralink. There's another company out there. Guarantee you, it's already been happening. It's like, what? It's crazy. It's the idea that there could be these people out there that we don't even know about, that have already tapping in somehow into this. That just seems far-fetched and crazy. But he was so serious, deadpan. It was like, it's happening, man. It's cool.
My recent discovery that it feels a little less like sci-fi and future, but is that I just recently read or heard, I don't remember where, but 70% of the content that is on social media now is being created by AI or by technology. Yeah. And it made me go,
jeez.
It's only 30% of this is real human content, and the rest of it is artificially generated content. And I think, I mean,
probably even less that's human, that's real content, because part of that is also ads.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think they might have been including that, but yeah, I just feel golly, the amount of content that we're getting fed is now even just artificially generated or computer generated now. So kind of interesting. I wanted to just pivot and ask you guys, I think probably a lot of this feels a little bit scary or frightening, or is there any good in AI? I think it would be maybe some of the takeaway. And I think from for me, I was able to know how these bunnies were. So, but any
positive,
any other applications that you guys are using right now that you're seeing benefit from AI, or you implementing these tools into your daily life or at work or however that you'd want to share, or that would people be good for us to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I use ChatGPT fairly regularly, particularly for work when I'm trying to design some Power BI formulas, or I've been learning Python as code, and I've been trying to learn it for years, and have taken an introductory courses a few times, and got the basics through just I guess, old-fashioned online learning. But then being able to ask ChatGPT and get help developing scripts has taken me from moving like 15 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour real fast. And it's been really, really helpful for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a conversation. This is Glenn here. I was having a conversation with my stepdad about a verse in Romans. And I was asking him some questions about the Greek and just kind of wondering about it. And he went upstairs to his room and then came back a few minutes later with a 15-page write-up from AI on this verse in Romans and how it connected to all these other verses in the Bible and the Greek breakdown. And I was like, well, this is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow.
yeah, I thought that was super positive.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I mean, we just, at our church, we're going through right now this 21 days of prayer, and we're every day generating like a short story of God moving in power and revival. And I was listening to some sort of podcast, and they were just saying, that if you can create a visual aid when you're teaching or preaching, they surveyed, and you're like 4 times as likely to recall and remember it. So I just had this idea, like, I know they got all these video AI tools out there. Why don't we just feed our scripts into these tools and generate these videos? Like, what would it be like to have lived through the Welsh revival or the New York businessman's revival? And just some of the videos really corny. It's got a ways to go, but I thought it could be helpful. But it was really fun to see just right before your eyes. Just took a few minutes to get these videos, and hopefully it does have that effect that people actually are engaged watching them. It brings it to life. It helps you imagine what it might actually have been like. And it makes it a little bit more real for you, thinking about God moving in these stories. So that was just a fun, like, real life today tool that we're using.
That's funny. I was looking on, kind of related to that. This is a random story, but I was looking on Google Gemini, like, has just released a bunch of new visual tools, like generative video tools. And they have this example, and it's they've taken all these like old Harley Davidson. It was like a promo with Harley Davidson, all these old like real black and white images of early, from the 20s all the way through like the 60s Harley Davidsons, and they put them into this video, like generative video thing. And it's crazy, like these like videos come to life, or these still images start still and they come to life, and it's like, oh my gosh, this feels like it feels like magic. In some ways I was like, oh, that's amazing, like kind of pulled in and drawn into this. So I think like the capabilities of some of these tools to like capture your imagination and really bring a story of what maybe be a still image to life is an interesting use of this. Did you have one too?
Matt here. I've used it for things as simple as I've got these ingredients in my kitchen, and I need a recipe to make with these ingredients, and it gives 4 or 5 options, and some of them have been good. And then I've been brainstorming both like how to change some of the things that I teach in my philosophy classes, and also when things get stale in the classroom, I use it to brainstorm like ideas for classroom activities, and some of them have been good too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We, like, you were talking about taking images, like we use it for health diagnoses at our home with our kids, and they gotta, what is this? It's a bug bite or whatever. And, it's actually been very helpful just to know, should we care about it? Should we take the kids into the ER or not, And then, I had another example. I was gonna I just lost it.
Well, one of the things like with the health, like, diagnosis and growth, I think of the technology is that, with a machine. So to give a bit of context, what it's doing, it's creating these neural networks, they're called, and it's these massive data centers that are, some they're building that are the size of Manhattan, and it is like, that amount of space with all these computer chips, graphic processor chips in there, in server racks that are taking massive amounts of data and able to look at and fed, information. And so some of the breakthroughs in medicine that they're finding is that with like radiology and being able to look at like diagnosis and analyze like this is, millions of images, radiology images, and being able to predictively say like, feed a new image in there and say this is the diagnosis based on like what we've seen in millions of other images. So there are some like significant and massive like advancements in medicine in particular, and coding, and that have it's rapid onset, in the last 2 to 3 years that we've seen like substantial leaps in technology and by use of AI.
In fact, you can fact check me, but I believe there was even an AI suggested a new treatment for cancer, like a new that's in like rapid development and testing right now. That was suggested. It was like looking at all of the the data and saying, hey, you haven't invented this medicine yet, but they suggested you try it, and I think it's actually getting early approval already.
Yeah. Well, even during COVID, like a lot of the development, RNA like development and advancements, and whether that I'm not going to go into that, but there was a lot of medical advancements that AI was like behind.
Let's talk about vaccines.
Whether you got chipped or not in a vaccine, we'll probably stay away from that. But anyway, there are some like significant and interesting like advancements that this tool's like brought to us. So. One of I think maybe the next like topic or conversation that I'm interested in just getting your guys' perspective on is any technology that comes out, it promises something, right? It makes promises for our improvement or medical advances or being able to diagnose whether this is a baby bunny or not. We see these like advancements coming, and there's promises that are made. So my question to you guys is, maybe you haven't thought about this, but what is the gospel of AI? What is it promising to us? And can we believe it and trust in it, I guess?
There was an interview with Peter Thiel. I think Matt was the one who shared it with me. Interview with Peter Thiel and Ross Douthat. A podcast called Interesting Times, and he was asking Peter Thiel about just AI and some of his thoughts on it. And at one point Peter Thiel was saying he was talking about transgender surgeries and like replacing organs and that whole field, and he said the problem with that is that it's not far enough. Mm-hmm. He said, with artificial intelligence, we can do more than just replace one of our reproductive organs. We can start to basically become immortal. Mm-hmm. And that was his belief, is that as AI advances more and more, that we're not just going to be replacing individual organs, that we're actually going to have superhuman bodies. Mm-hmm. And as I was listening, I thought, yeah, that's actually, and he went on to say, and not just advanced superhuman bodies, but changed hearts. And I thought that's so interesting, because that's actually what the gospel promises, is that our hearts would be changed and then eventually God would give us resurrected bodies. But now with some of these researchers, they think that that's what AI can do for us, is give us a new body and a new heart. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the gospel of AI, is that we can become immortal in some ways. Mm.
Yeah, there's a whole like I guess pseudo religion that is lives and exists in Silicon Valley called transhumanism, and it's this this concept that it's transhumanism. It's becoming something other, transitioning humanity through the technology and adaptive technology, and it's interesting around that is that some of the argument is that we're already like experiencing some of that just through like modern medicine, like. You've got a valve replacement in your heart, or you've had a limb replaced, or some things like that, and saying, well, we're already experiencing this to some degree. What's the difference between going a step further and tapping our brains into something that would give us more mental capabilities, or helping us to excel further.
I think we went straight to the deep.
Good job, Glenn.
You're welcome.
But even just like what does AI promise? I was reading Andy Crouch's book, The Life We're Looking For, and he talks about how every technology promises things, and the number one promise is now you'll be able to do this, and then number two is now you won't have to do things. Like it promises to do things for you and save time for things. And I mean, just turn on your TV or your phone. That's what the commercials are built around. Of like, this is what you can do with AI. I mean, playing in my head are different commercials I've just seen in the past week of like what was possible with AI. And that's what all the advertising is built around, is those first two. But the questions or the consequences that don't get advertised or whatever are always there as well, is the now you'll no longer be able to. Like, I mean, even so, like you've got streaming services and you're able to like have everything you can, but now you won't have this attention span or space to read. You won't be able to do things like that. Or now we can play music, any songs we want, all over the place, everywhere. But that now you won't be able to like have the desire or whatever to learn to play them for yourselves, or like learn an instrument. Like it takes away, or and then the last one is, and now you'll have to. Is the last thing. Now you have to. So I mean, I just think of like all the technology, like my phone and stuff like that, which do great things, but now I have to always be upgrading. I always have to download new updates and keep track of updates. Now I have to keep track of charging stuff and like where, like, is everything charged? And it just like everything. Yes, you'll be able to, and you have the like, you won't have to, but we can't forget about what it takes away as well, and what it forces upon us. How does it change the way we live? Are we adapting our human lives to become more like machines in order to accommodate the devices in our life?
Yeah. The scary part is I used to know my way around without a map. And now I use the map on my phone and I get lost without it. So I've lost that ability to find my way. And I think one of the scary things about AI is the thing that it's promising to replace is like our ability to think. So like, you don't have to think anymore. I'll do it for you. And then if you use it over and over again, eventually, whether it's your attention span or your ability to, put two things together to make a conclusion, you lose that just the same way that we've all lost our ability to find our way in a city.
I mean, speaking of like something we've lost but wouldn't even think twice about, in several different sources I read it, talking about one of Plato's dialogues. He talks about like the dangers of writing, and he's arguing against writing because then you don't remember it, you don't know it, and if you don't know it, if you don't have it memorized, then does it even belong to you? And and we would look at that and be like, you were worried about writing, like what, like, and yet so something was lost. I mean, if you know, like oral cultures can remember, their memories are incredible, and we've lost it because we've outsourced our memory to the page. And we've also obviously gained so much from that. So, but and now though the concern with AI is not we've outsourced our memory to the page, but now by all this, like AI can write it for you, AI can generate it for you. We are outsourcing our ability to articulate, and if you like articulating, putting something into words, that is it shapes us. When you try to match words to your internal impressions or whatever, you're forming who you are and you're forming your understanding of things. So if we're outsourcing that and can't do that anymore, like what are we left with? Articulation is hard. Writing is hard. Like it's like, and there's a reason why, like, oh, this will do it for me. But what are we doing to ourselves, and what are we no longer going to be able to do if we let a machine write it for me.
That's good.
Yeah, there's a formation that takes place in the place of hard work, of struggling through something. In the context of learning something, you're really wrestling with it. But even in the context of relationships, right?
Yeah.
People don't respond the way that you want them to. They don't know your exact personality types. You haven't fed it that information, so they don't, give you the exact, phrasing and wording and tenor that a chatbot would. They don't respond as quickly, and so, they don't always agree with you. And, that's just human to human relation. And it probably we're going to go with this. I mean, that actually impacts our relationship with God too, right? Like God doesn't always respond in the timing and the manner that I want him to. And what are we losing when we begin to expect immediate responses exactly tailored to what it knows we want to hear? There is something that we've lost.
We go back to the husband in your example, where why do you prefer her? Well, she's always there for me, and
she's really nice
tells
to
me what I want to hear.
It's so huge. Even my earlier example, when me and my stepdad were discussing the verse and he gave me the printout. I mean, there's some things I don't mind losing. Like, I don't mind that I didn't have to go find a lexicon, and that was cool. But there is something lost when I can find any verse I want on my phone, and I really don't need to know the Bible anymore because I can always just Google and find out the verse from Google. And we start to lose our motivation to know the scriptures, and we start to lose our ability to memorize and internalize the scripture because it takes hard spiritual work. And so that's a deep concern.
Yeah. When you read a real physical book, I don't know if it's like this for you guys, but as I'm flipping through the pages, I remember the specific location that I'm looking for. I'm like, I don't remember the exact verse, but I can flip to approximately the right place.
And where it's on the page,
Yeah, but if I'm always asking AI to do that for me, then I have no idea where it is in the Bible, or if it actually is in the Bible.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the early thoughts that I started having as I was using it is this thought of this thing is always with me. It always has an answer. There's this omniscience and omnipresence, and it almost takes on these attributes of God in some ways. I'm calling out to this thing, and what it's doing is giving me immediacy, and this response. And that's in our own humanity, we long for to know things now, in the moment. There's this want that's never ending, to get the instant gratification. Our whole culture is built on that. And I think really to quote John Eldridge again, we're disciples of the internet, and the season and time that we're living in is that if you were born, anytime, I don't know, whatever generation that was, but you were raised in the 90s, we have been trained and raised on immediacy. You can go to the internet and find out something right now, right away. And what I think is really diminished in us, and if you read the scriptures, there's so many times where it's wait on God, wait and and receive the promises of God, and wait and behold and and experience God's deliverance for you in time, in the right season, in the right way. And our longing and yearning, in our sin nature, is to shortcut and circumvent that by getting the answer right now and not having to wait. And I think that's one of my big fears, I think, for us as the people of God in this hour is have we lost, have we have we given that capability away to technology and really lost our ability to wait and listen and receive from God real answers and the truth? Did you have something you were gonna?
Well, maybe, I don't know if it's related or not, but I wrestle with the question a lot, because if you look back, I think there's a phrase that's often repeated: if you could choose any time in history to be born, but you couldn't guarantee where you're going to be born, when would you pick? And the answer is always today. You have the most likelihood to land in somewhere that you're not going to be impoverished, you're not going to be in war, you're not going to be in, health conditions that, are just terrible, because largely due to the proliferation of technology and energy, and I think that's true. And you could certainly read the narrative of Silicon Valley of how AI is going to only improve those conditions, only going to make us healthier, only going to solve more diseases, only going to make wealth and prosperity more accessible. And then you even go to the idea of the printing press, and the printing press enabled the scriptures to be distributed to everyone. And now we had the word of God that was available not just to the elite, but to every, And so you could see the benefits of it. No longer do you need to afford to go to get a PhD to understand the Greek, whatever it is. You don't have to understand how to use Logos and, pay for these crazy commentary sets. It's just there. And so you could see how that's really beneficial. Maybe even someone growing up impoverished that can never go to college, teaching themselves how to do some of these things. So the benefits are there, but it's not without cost. And so, I have this internal dialogue, or maybe external dialogue with my wife about, how are we to weigh the pros that I think are in some degree, objective, that there are, as energy arrives in society, as technology arrives in society, life outcomes, quality of life gets better. Those are, they're in some measurable standards, but then there's also a loss too. So how do we?
Well, just I think questions of meaning, and we live in one of the loneliest because technology and all this material wealth has isolated us, and I don't know. I'm not. I would probably pick today too to live, but is material prosperity, is that what life is about?
It's interesting. I think to that point, I think there is the gospel of AI is a promise of progress and ultimately utopia, I think that it's a creation of heaven on earth, and this idea that we can, through our own creation and our own means, cultivate and create all the opportunities, all the circumstances to make life without a life of ease and without pain and suffering, and which is the ultimate end of what God's promises, that we would live in eternity in resurrected bodies and in union with, where there would be no tears and loneliness, and where ultimately we would be, there would be prosperity and utopia, but I think there's this present, it's probably always been with us, this grab for what could we gain through our own means and our own attention and our own capabilities. And I wanted to maybe take us to some of the scripture that tells and shares the stories that this is not a new, while it's novel and brand new, and we live again in unprecedented times, and the story that we're living in has also been seen throughout scripture too. And I don't know if any of you guys have scriptures that come to mind when you think about this, or from the garden, through human history, where have we seen this before, and how have we seen it play out?
Yeah, I mean the very first lie that the serpent told Eve was, if you eat the fruit, you can be like God.
Yeah.
And that same lie has turned up again and again all throughout biblical history. And now as we think about the AI revolution, it's really the same lie again, that through your own means, through your own technology, through your own human intelligence and progress, you can be like God. That was the story of the Tower of Babel, where a bunch of humans got together, and at the time their technology was bricks, which I guess was innovative for that day. But it was pretty heady for them, and they wanted to reach heaven. And it was more than just a tall building. It was they wanted something transcendent apart from God. And so that's what we see turning up again and again, is that we're reaching for transcendence. We're reaching for God likeness apart from the gospel, apart from the way that God offers it to us freely.
Yeah, and along with that, the story of man's sin and fighting against God, it leads to empire, and we've got the Egyptians and the Babylonians enslaving people in the Bible and forcing to amass power and stuff like that. And that just reminds me of, Eric, what you were telling me the other day about the costs of environmental and the costs of essentially enslaving people pretty much to give us this AI.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now called Empire of AI, which is really a journalistic kind of documented account of the of OpenAI and its origins and history, and it's an interesting read. I don't know that I would recommend it, but it definitely like paints a picture of that, and some of the stories. And this happens often has happened with technology, is that if you think about this, you're dumping basically to generate these massive data sets to be able to power this technology, they've had to scrape all of the internet. I mean, I'm going to put air quotes around all of the internet, but they're amassing massive amounts of data from the internet, scraping wherever they can get their hands on. And if you think about what is on the internet, it's like a lot of garbage and dark corners, and whether that's visual content or written content, the worst and most vile, like hate speech and imagery that you can imagine has been, in the pursuit of progress and advancing these things quickly, has been dumped into these data sets. And what in early days meaning like 2020 or 2021 of OpenAI, they would employ large like groups of people in Kenya in these villages to go through paying them $2 an hour to go through this transcripted material or imagery to flag content that was not suitable for work, or whatever you want to say is terrible imagery. And the repercussions and impact of that on these villages and families, where these men would go to work and couldn't come home and say what they were doing, tell their kids what they were doing at work, but their personalities were changing. And they ended up, they tell this, the author tells a story of this man that she interviewed that went home one day, and his wife and children had moved out and left a note saying, "I don't recognize who you are," or what, because of the impact of this. And so that's just one small example of the impact of, that we don't see necessarily. Or in Uruguay, there's, stories of water, so these massive data centers they have to use fresh water, potable water, to cool these chips. So they're running these like GPUs, NVIDIA GPUs, the highest powered tools that process this information in a quick way in these massive, factories, for lack of a better term, data centers, and they have to cool them down, otherwise they burn out, and they have to cool them with fresh water. They can't use salt water or anything else. And they ended up basically taking all the potable water in these entire regions in Uruguay, and ended up flushing some of the more toxic pollutants back into the water stream, and causing downstream effects of cancer and some of these other things. So there are some hidden stories and costs of this. I don't know if that's where we're going.
No, that's exactly where I was going. The cost of trying to do things to be like God. Yeah, it leads to enslaving and destroying its creation.
Well, I think even going beyond or before the fall, even the creation is instructive. Adam was formed from dust and the breath of God, and then humanity was formed. And, there is something distinct and unique about being human, the breath of God forming with the dust. And then all the way to Jesus, the incarnation. That's really instructive too.
Yes.
If God just wanted to provide us knowledge, he would have written a book. But he gave us the person of Jesus in our own flesh and blood, incarnating, which actually I think provides me great hope and grounding in this conversation. It's like, okay, if God designed us to be human, like, I don't know what AI is going to do, but there's something special that's never going to be robbed from me, and from you.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I just think that's an important element to be grounded in.
Yes.
Yeah. I that's one of my favorite things to think about too, is how the incarnation is in a lot of ways the opposite of our arrogant reach for transcendence.
Yes.
It's exactly the opposite, that Jesus himself, who was God, descended instead to become man, and even descended even further into suffering and death to lift us up so we could be sons and daughters of God. It's the exact opposite progression of us reaching for that apart from him. And that's the path we're to take, this path of descent and humility, because God actually wants to freely give us more than we could ever ask or imagine.
One scripture I've been thinking about just recently is the story of the bronze serpent, when the people were getting bitten by snakes, and Moses made the serpent where they would look at the serpent and be healed. And it was like a tool of their salvation. It was like this technology that healed all these people. But then later in the story, they lifted it up and they started to worship it. So the tool became an idol. And so one worry that is probably on everybody's mind, and we've already kind of mentioned the religious aspects of this, is where we've got this amazing tool that's got all this amazing things it's doing, but we change it from being a tool into being an idol.
I think that speaks a little bit to another verse that is instructive. Maybe on the other side of this equation, it's referred to as a cultural mandate. The charge in the garden to go and cultivate, to create culture. And Andy Crouch writes a lot about what that means. And it's been said, the Christian starts in a garden, the Bible starts in a garden, ends in a city. Even you see some of the elements that God put in the garden being formed into roads and streets and, walls in the new heavens and the new earth. So, and then you see Revelation 21, the kings of the earth bringing the splendor from their culture into the new creation. So it does also give me hope that there is a way to create culture, to create technology, to participate that isn't completely irredeemable. There is something beautiful that we can be active agents and participants in this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a way in which he made us to work alongside him and stewarding his creation, not as pharaohs or Babylonian kings enslaving, but working alongside it with how God, with his wisdom. And I think that's one of the things, like when I think of what are we here for and what is it, just like central to who God is and the Trinity is relationship. He made us to be in relationship with him, working alongside him. He made us to be in relationship with each other. And so that's one of my fears of things like AI is the separation, the isolation that it does. Like in creating things that are machine written, machine created, there's no person behind it. And it's hard, like, it may look interesting, be technological, but like we look to it for connection and friendship or something, and then it will fail us. It just turns us in and out. And so I think that's something that concerns me, but also like there are ways of technology can be a valuable tool for a relationship. I mean, my wife and I, our family lives hours away, and FaceTime is an example. Like we're able to like see each other. It's not as good as being together in person, but it's better than the situation otherwise.
One of the things that the questions that I had for us is that you see in Scripture oftentimes like God in both the prophetic books and then in Kings, this reliance on other nations or other technologies, and oftentimes this idea of like chariots from Egypt or a dependence on that for our salvation and for our liberation, or the use of technology that often God comes in and says like, you relied on this thing instead of like turning to me and like trusting in me, and therefore like there's some consequences to that. And I think the question that I have is like, where's the line between trusting in chariots and trusting in the name of our God, and I think that's the tension, is that chariots awesome, a car is great, it's going to get us some places and allow for us to do some pretty neat things that may be kingdom beneficial, but where's the line of reliance, and really trusting in the name of our God? How would you guys like walk that or live into that?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's what we're all trying to figure out what to do with these new technologies, back to the Babel story. What if those same people with that same technology had a different heart posture? What if they had said, we have these new bricks, we have these new capabilities, what do you want us to do with them, God? They had put themselves intentionally dependent on their creator, and they had wanted to build something that would glorify God. Then I think the story would have been completely different. And so it's about our heart posture. The same technology that can create drone clusters that can wipe out whole countries, is the same AI technology that can translate the Bible into new languages for unreached cultures. So it's our heart posture.
Yeah. One of the things about in the Babel story that is interesting is that they say, let us build a name for ourselves. And this idea of it's again, this like heart posture, reach for, let us be like God and let us like grasp for these things. And I think that if we're all honest, like there's that lives inside of us, this like yearning to be like God. And I always love if you're, the Genesis story, like in the garden, it's like, God like makes man in his own image. And then a couple sentences later, like the devil's tempting him saying like, you could be like God. And it's like this stark contrast of like, you actually are like God. You're made in his image and you're like God. And there's this reach in our hearts to like grasp at something, to make a name for ourselves, that really can be the derailing like piece that we need to build guardrails around, I guess,
Yeah. One of the things I've been thinking about is recognizing the ways that we're formed. And I think you mentioned this right in the very beginning, that you're interested in spiritual formation. And when we recognize all the different ways that we're formed, and like David was talking about, the things that give also take away, that it helps us to make decisions about how we spend our time and what we're going to give our focus to throughout the day. And recognizing like these things might be good gifts and might give us good things, but they're also taking things away. And we can put into place practices that the church has been using for 2,000 years to pull away and get away from technology and spend time in silence and solitude and prayer and reading the Bible and like strengthening those parts of our character and our soul so that it minimizes the things that are taken away.
I think what struck me is the idea of monitoring and paying attention to my own heart, my own mind. Where am I getting frustrated? Where am I getting angry as I use these technologies? What impatience is this like building in me? And keeping an eye out for that and using those as opportunities to turn to God and remind myself, what am I actually made for? What am I here for? What is my hope? Even if I've been having some long-term health difficulties, and you better believe I've used ChatGPT to like ask like, what are some things that could help, and some have been helpful, some have not, but like, and it can be frustrating, but like, okay, I want this to be solved now. I want to be healed now, but I just feel God calling me in it, like you will one day be healed. What am I? What am I building in you? What is waiting doing? Like, what is trusting me? What does walking with me look like? And I feel like those are opportunities to turn towards Him rather than towards like, I need it on my time and Him.
Yeah, and I would say we do have some clear boundaries in Scripture, like thinking of the health arena. I'm for any advancement from AI that's going to give us new remedies and new medicines that are going to help heal people. But as soon as we start talking about cryonics and freezing people's brains, live forever, like
uploading your mind into the cloud.
I mean, Hebrews 9 says it's appointed unto man to die once. Like, there's some boundaries there, and so it's going back to what God has. And another, like, God calls us to pray without ceasing. It's like, and so as soon as we find ourselves with these technologies that are helping us, as soon as we find that they're taking away from our prayer life, then we've just bumped up against another boundary or something that we need to check ourselves. And so I think Scripture is really helpful for that, like what we're called to and how the technology is either helping us or hurting us in that path.
One of the things, like to what you were saying, around these practices and stuff, I think that they speak to, I think they're an antidote for this gospel of AI, or the promises of a limitless like life, or a life of ease, or a life of promise that that we're all like desiring to have, this like convenience and ease and efficiency and progress and growth. Like, man, those are the promises that are coming our way. And when we practice fasting, and when we practice silence, and when we practice solitude, or any of the other disciplines like that just naturally bring a limit to our lives, we actually encounter the grace of God in that area. And recently, I just feel like the Psalm 16, that has been like running in my head, and it says like your boundary lines, like the boundary lines of my life have fallen in pleasant places. And this idea that like we're actually like we're hemmed in by God's grace, and that often comes to us through the limits that He's given us, whether that's financially or the place we live, or Paul obviously like had a thorn in his side, and it was like a grace to him. And so our pursuit of breaking through the boundaries and the limits of God, like moves beyond that gray area into a place of outside of the grace of God. And I think we can practice as Christians a discipline that brings us into a place of grace and His goodness for us.
Yeah, I think we're, as a society, I think you can see this in studies, approaching this conversation maybe very differently, maybe more humbly and aware of some of the dangers than say when social media came down. And I think even the fact that we're having this conversation, and many other people, I think are helpful guides for us. But I do think there's just going to be such an opportunity for the church to be a prophetic counterculture. And if you think about the people that, some of the ways that this is going to go wrong in society, the church can be a culture where the real community and connections are formed. The church can be a culture where we can actually wrestle with the deep things of our soul when everyone else is chirping, everything else is chirping in our ears. So I think, using these practices to cultivate, to strengthen our relational ties, to like, actually, this is a time to lean more into relationships than less when everyone else is getting isolated. What does it even look like for, other people to be able to speak into your life about the boundaries that you have with technology? There's such an opportunity when content is going to become generic, when knowledge is going to be generic. we have the mind of Christ. Like, that's the ultimate AI, right? Like, actually reading scripture and having the Spirit highlight something and be able to speak prophetically into a situation. AI is not going to be able to touch that. And I think real is going to so dominate. Like, we have a chance as a church to be able to illustrate something that is way transcendent to anything the world has to offer.
Can we just like continue down that path? Because I feel like, and this was not in my notes, but I feel like what we're seeing right now in studies and these things is that there is an awakening happening across the world, and that's largely to spiritual things. It's not just to Christianity, but there is this hunger for something that is transcendent, something that's bigger than us. And I think AI is this voice of almost, it does feel artificial and it feels like present, and it causes some concern. But I think my question is for us is, how can we as the church position ourselves to bring what is real, to offer something that's transcendent, that would meet the need of the hour and the hunger that we're seeing in the youth of this generation, like, men that are coming back, and we're hearing these reports of revival around the world. And how can we as Confluence churches, Radiant churches, position ourselves to be prepared and ready to speak into that in this hour?
Yeah. I think one way is to intentionally be prophetic. In Acts, when the Spirit was poured out, the hallmark of the new covenant people was for sons and daughters to prophesy. Not just prophets, quote unquote, but like the church to be a prophetic church. And to be a prophetic church, it means to hear what God is saying right now and to communicate that to the world. So the scripture, yes, but we're doing that right now. We're trying, like, what are the relevant scriptures to the AI revolution? We're trying to be prophetic. And I think that's
Trying.
really hard. Trying. I think that's our call, is to lean into God and to what the Spirit is saying to the churches, which is often going to be different than what AI tells us when we Google something, to lean into that and to keep on speaking that. And those will be words of life, words of direction. And that could be in our sermons, that could be in our conversations one-on-one.
I was just going to go back to the spiritual disciplines and putting into practice things where we embrace a little bit of suffering, or if there's a lot of suffering, like some of us have experienced a lot of suffering, how we navigate that, I think, is a witness to something that most people don't have access to. Like when significant suffering happens, if somebody has no hope, they don't know what to do. But when they see somebody else who's gone through something significant, like a health scare or death of a loved one or whatever, and they see that we suffer like people, not like the other people who have no hope, but we suffer like people who do have hope.
That's good.
I just think this technology, it promises frictionless living and stuff. But the reality is, as soon as you encounter other people, there's friction. But I think that's good. And really, I don't think the Bible does not promise frictionless living, or like you just said, suffering. And I think we're dealing with a profound loneliness because of how technology relieves us of the burden of other people. But as a church, we can provide life. We were made to be in relationship. We were made to be the people of God together, meeting together, doing life together. But I think the opportunity is there for us because that is who God made us to be, and God is in us working towards that. But I think there's also we need to be careful what we are being formed by. Are we being formed by what our culture is calling us to, or being formed by what God, it's gonna be uncomfortable to get together, to like, you may not want to go tonight to like this, but like getting together, like talking to someone, building relationships. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. But it's worth it. And like God promises that like relationship is where life is. And, and I think when we do that, if we push into that and get good at that, we can reduce the friction a little bit, and like that helps us invite others into it, and they can experience the life of a body like that we were meant to live.
I think there's two things that come to mind for me. One is over time, and I haven't done this yet, but I think it would be great to create some like rules of engagement for even how you use these chatbots and how you use these, and maybe do it in the time of community. But I'm just thinking as a practical example, I could use it to write my sermon that I'm going to preach on Sunday, and not, check out. Obviously I think that's that would be in the no category. But you could use it to say, hey, there is a single young lady from a different ethnicity sitting in my congregation. What questions would she bring to this text that I might be blind to? And I'm using this as a way, the technology as a way to hopefully serve others, or to, in an empathetic or a way that is, servant oriented.
Just to interrupt her, just to give you a little bit of pushback, like,
please.
Let's stop to like maybe I'm reaching out to her, this actual person, and finding like,
maybe it's 11 o'clock on a Saturday night.
No, for sure. For sure. I just like,
not that that's happened before.
No, I just like
boundaries.
I have boundaries, and I guess I will say this is what makes me feel guilty about some of my use of ChatGPT is I'll use it to like answer a question or whatever, but like I know everything about it. There's probably somebody I could call who could tell me what I'm trying to reach out to ChatGPT, and like yes, that's it's harder. It's like but there's a connect there. I'm building
100%.
life. So
no, for sure, it's good pushback. I think in general, just thinking about ways in which you could use it that would be off limits, and ways that it may be helpful, and servant or other oriented to the way that's possible. Good pushback. But I think the second thing is I think the church just trying to find ways to foster connection both to each other and connection to the Father and the Holy Spirit, and ideally both together. I just said, this Sunday we had a prayer meeting for our Sunday service where we just opened the text and we looked at a psalm and just spent time in solitude together, and then came back together and started praying. And I'm a big preach the word guy. Like we need to exhort the word, but it just struck me. I mean, we got so much positive feedback and so many first time guests praying out loud, people engaging in together, upward towards God in prayer. And I was like, the AI can't replicate this at all, and it was just actually God speaking through his word, like he promises to do when we're together. And so I'm not saying that like we replace the sermon by any means, but I'm just saying that I think there is a shift. The church in America, at least, has been so content heavy, content. And so connection light, I feel like. And I think we have an opportunity when people are craving for connection, craving for transcendence, craving for some ancient truth to tether their life to. We got it, you know? And so I think there's opportunities for us to create these atmospheres.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind for me is that what is unique about humanity and unique about the church in general is that we were formed for relationship with God. We were formed to walk in the garden with God and to be in union with him. And that's actually one of the like promises of this like singularity, or this like, ultimate like transhumanist like goal of union between man and machine, that we would become transcendent like God. And what is on offer for the church, for us to like walk in, is to hear God and to walk with him, to be in union with him. This is what Jesus like prayed for us, is that we would be one with the Father, that we would like have a union with God. And so I think that is like one thing that would set apart the church in this hour, and be an invitation to become a people of his presence, and to really like be in union both together and with God, that we would be a place where his presence is like experienced and his voice is heard, and he's healing and bringing like new life and salvation to us, like in that. And I think, just to echo what you guys also said, is that for us to become a people and a community that is not surprised and shocked by the brokenness of the world around us, and to offer redemption and to offer forgiveness of sins, which is something that AI it can say the words, it can mime those things, but it cannot offer like real forgiveness, between a husband and a spouse, or friends that have broken relationship. It cannot offer real forgiveness and redemption, and to be a kind of people that would model that and give that away, I think it would be a real invitation to the world now. So this has been a good conversation, I think. Pretty helpful. As we kind of bring things to a close, what's one thing you'd want us to know, and one thing that we should do as a church or as a people that you're thinking about? It's one thing we could know, and one thing we could walk away from this conversation with.
So an insight I got from Andy Crouch, and I would actually recommend that as a resource. So it was an interview between Andy Crouch and, what was the other guy's name?
Jay Kim.
Yeah. Great interview. You could just Google that and I'm sure it will come right up. Another resource, while I'm on the resource topic, is a book by John Lennox. I think it's The AI Revolution 2084.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a riff off of 1984,
Mm-hmm.
the dystopian aspects of AI. I'm about halfway done and it's awesome. And I thought I was going to be too over my head, and it's not. So, anyway, so something that I got from that interview from Andy Crouch was he was just reminding us of the two greatest commandments: the command to love God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then the second commandment, to love one another. And he was saying that technology is helpful and fruitful insofar as it helps us to walk out those two commandments. I mean, those two commandments are the purpose of our lives. For a purposeless generation, that's it. Our purpose is to love God and to love other people in all the ways that he commands. And if technology helps me find a remedy for my mom with cancer, then I think that's loving to use it. I'm going to use it. But if technology or AI is keeping me from having conversations with my wife at night, then that's not love. That's actually hindering relationship. And so I'm not going to use it. So I think those are just really helpful filters as we look to whether technology is helpful for us or not.
Mm-hmm.
I want to recommend a book by Paul Kingsnorth that's not out yet. It's coming out next month, but a lot of the content is on his Substack for free. And I think one of the things that he challenged me the most as a 21st century Western American who's significantly influenced by scientific materialism is to recognize the spiritual aspects of the world in general, but especially the way technology maybe even makes the barrier thin between the spiritual world and the physical world. So I'll just leave that there.
Mm-hmm. That book's called Against the Machine.
Against the Machine,
yeah. Yeah, fascinating. Matt turned me on to his writing, and it actually is pretty is an interesting perspective. It's helpful, I think.
Yeah, I think one thing I would want you to know, or want us to know, is that we were made for relationship. We were made for relationship with God. He wants to know us, for us to know him and to walk with him. And we were made for a relationship with others, and others who were made in his image. And the reality is that technology, and specifically AI, preys on that desire. I mean, just if you've used a chat bot, you know how familiar it is and stuff like that. And I feel like we've seen in some of the horror stories we were sharing earlier that there's deep waters there of of developing relationships with AI and how that can affect us and give it portals into our lives. And so I would just one thing to do. I have, for my own life, I've set up little guardrails because I don't want to be drawn into that, especially, by the way, like in times like feeling lonely or things like that, like the temptation to talk to chatbot because it can have whole conversations with you. And like that's enormously seductive and I think deeply dangerous, unfortunately. So some guardrails I have in my own life on the sillier level is I definitely treat it I intentionally treat it as a robot and as a tool whenever I use ChatGPT. And the way that looks for me is I'm a very friendly person naturally, but I refuse on principle to say please or thank you to ChatGPT when I say it because I intentionally, no matter how friendly it gets with me, I'm trying to like say, no, you are a machine. You are not a
Do you
person.
go the other direction and insult it every once in a while?
No.
Just to make clear.
No.
You suck.
Give me the answer, you machine.
Maybe, but on a more serious note, like I have made I will not reveal personal or like I will not treat like a confidant or like I mean, I guess I asked him some pretty personal questions as far as like medical things or things like that. But
This bad rash.
right. But as far as like my thoughts or concerns or things like I will not treat it as a counselor or as because it will gladly go there. But I want to stay away from that. So that would be my practical thing. And yeah, and to that, I've been talking a lot about relationship. I would recommend a Substack that's not very active, but the archives are there, called the Convivial Society from L.M. Sakasis. And then if you want a joyfully pessimistic look at AI, The Honest Broker by Ted Goya is another Substack that he is positive that the humanity and romanticism will win the day against AI. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I want to leave a lot of humility. I just think that we should be asking a lot more questions than giving answers at this point. I mean, obviously there's biblical wisdom we should really be pointing into. I'd want to learn what non-Western churches are saying about this, and I would want to learn what people not like us are, how they're leaning into this conversation, because I think we can be so blinded by our own culture here in Silicon Valley or in the United States. So I guess I would but I don't think this conversation is going away anytime soon. And in fact, if we did this conversation a month from now, we could be having a whole nother set of conversations because it's just advancing so fast. So I guess I would just encourage people not to ignore this conversation, lean in, keep reading. I think in terms of research or resources, Andy Crouch, I think, just provides a wealth of information. So anything he says about this is just really, really good. But yeah, I don't know. I think, and then practically, I'd just say we're never going to go wrong by filling the containers of our soul with living water. And so I think, for me, just leaning more and more into prayer in the secret place and in community, I just think solves a million problems downstream. Like if you can fill your souls with the voice and the presence of God in your life, then I think some of these other issues, there's wise principles we can employ, but it fills that need for loneliness that it fills that searching for being known and for knowledge. Again, we've got the mind of Christ when we pursue it together in community. So I guess just double down on prayer and the presence of God, I think, could help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing that in looking at this, I was kind of, the picture I was having is like you're riding a motorcycle, and if all you're staring at is like the side of the cliff, like that's the direction you're gonna go, is just off the road, you know. I don't know why a motorcycle if you're driving a car. I imagine myself on a motorcycle. That's what I do in my AI dreams. But I think there's a temptation with the fear and the doom and gloom. We're all going to lose our jobs. We're all like going to have our minds uploaded to the cloud, like that. We would like potentially venture off and have a reaction in the opposite direction that would actually be in fear. And you read scriptures and everywhere it's do not be afraid. I think is the counsel for our lives in this hour is to not be afraid. And in this world we'll have trouble, but I've overcome the world. And this promise of God's like presence, it won't leave us or forsake us. And so I just, in this hour when there's so many questions still, and I think hopefully anybody listening would recognize that we're not professionals here. And I think anybody that would say they are around this topic would be lying, is that there's a lot to learn and a lot for us to still harvest and grow together, and do that in community. And I think the one probably resource that I've been like gleaning so much from is a book by Justin Whitmell Early that's called Made for People. And it's an amazing book around how to build relationship and how to build community. And I think that in this hour, when there's so much isolation and the Surgeon General's like warning that like we're in an epidemic of loneliness and isolation, I think for us to build real like honest relationships where we can confess our sin and be forgiven and be truly known and seen and loved, that there's no other place but the church to find that, and where we can have people challenge our lives and call us to accountability. There's like no other place like the church that we can live in community like that and receive that. And to your comment about, I would highly recommend that we don't go to counsel in these things, for these things. So,
You close us all in prayer.
Yeah, let's do it. Jesus, we love you. Your name is the name above all names. You're the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and there's only one name by which we can be saved, and it is the name of Jesus Christ. And we thank you that you put on flesh and that you are forever, Lord, linked with us in our humanity, and that we will one day, Lord, be with you, perfected, and receive the reward of our faithfulness, Lord, and our lives, God. And I pray, Jesus, right now for every person listening to this, that they would be filled with life and hope and joy and peace. Your presence right now in their cars, in their homes, as they're picking up their kids or doing their work, Lord, in an hour where there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of unknowns, Lord, we ask that you would be the loudest voice in our midst, and that you would awaken your church to your prophetic voice, and that you would come in power and in presence, Lord, as we gather together, and that you'd build your kingdom, Lord. We ask that your kingdom would come and your will would be done on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Good job, guys. That was awesome.